I think everybody sees the glamorous photos and the sellout numbers, the eye-popping sellouts at the end, but they don't really understand the journey and the risks and the sleepless nights. You know, we don't just talk about the balls that you smashed. There's a lot of at-bats, times that the play did not go the way you drew it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Design Development, your hub to learn direct from top performers in real estate development, design, and construction. I'm your host, Renz Hayes, founding partner of H&O, lifelong learner, and I am personally obsessed with high-powered organizations and the leaders that guide them. If this is your first time listening, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. Let's go. It's my pleasure to introduce today's guest, Marc Savatsky. He has his own development and construction company called Choose Boston. He's super active on social media. He services larger scale developments through New Boston Ventures. I call him a Superconnector, and more specifically, Boston Real Estate Superconnector. But without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Marc. Please join me in welcoming Marc. Marc, thanks for joining us.
Renzo, it's great to be here, buddy.
For people that don't know Marc Savatsky, let's tell them a little bit about you and Choose Boston and what you're up to today.
Yeah, man. I guess I like to say my elevator pitch requires a pretty long ride, so I'll try to keep it brief. But in short, came out of school, went to work for a large general contractor in Boston. So sort of first and foremost, I consider myself a nuts and bolts, more of a technical builder, and the development stuff came later. So after spending a number of years there, kind of started taking some classes at night in real estate finance. And one of our clients sort of pulled me across the table onto the owner's side, and been there for almost 10, 11 years, doing some much larger development work, multifamily residential, high-end condominium product, mostly in and around Boston. And really came on board to represent their interests in terms of construction and as an owner's rep. But it's a very small shop, so quickly got to doing everything from entitlements to the capital stack, financing. And meanwhile, I started my own company called Choose Boston. And at Choose Boston, I sort of pick off one or two projects a year, sort of a smaller scale and size, 5, 7, 9 unit type urban infill work. And I do some development consulting and owner's rep work as well. So keep busy that way.
Yeah, a little everything there.
And I'm a notary public. I like to add that.
And notary, no big deal. So if you need it, you call him. He'll be there. Coming out of large scale construction and then immediately going to the development side, what are some preconceived notions that you had about the development world that you then learned was completely different than what you thought of from the construction side? Like, what changed when you went across the table? What did you learn?
You know, I think that from the construction side, you get promised a lot of different things. This project is set to start on such and such a date. It's fully approved and permitted and financed. And you sort of get to the other side of the table, and behind closed doors, it's a lot more chaos than I think outward appearances would belie. We sort of sit there, the straight face, like 3 months from now, we will put a shovel in the ground, and it is all taken care of. But you kind of have to maintain that to get people to keep cranking.
Yes. What happens on the development side that makes them have to take that leap of faith, so to speak, or to act confident about the future when the future might not be so clear?
Similar, everyone's selling to some degree. And so when an estimator gives you a number to the nearest penny on a set of cartoon drawings, and they say it with a straight face, you don't know that, and it's not that different from a real estate developer talking to a general contractor and saying it's going to start on this date and it's a project of this many units, and I'd like you to dedicate 3 estimators to the project for the next month. And and
estimating is a very challenging career.
Yeah,
I like to say estimating it's like a thankless job. Right? If you lose the job, you are too conservative, you carry too many contingencies. And if you win the job, it's like, well, what'd you miss? Why were you the low bid?
Oh, you can only, if you get everything right, great. You don't even get a pat on the back. It's like you were expected
That's your
to
job.
not miss anything. If you do miss something, half scope Savatsky over here. And
half scope Savatsky. We talk a lot about the buckets in budgeting, right? So you've seen you've operated on large scale construction with a budget. You've seen budgets and the importance of having all of the line items right from the developer side on the large scale. And then you run your own smaller scale construction and development. Like what has budgeting taught you? And like what are the things that people miss that end up biting them in the end?
Definitely. I mean, my first rule is never miss a bucket. So laws of large numbers, some I'll be over on some, under on others, and generally speaking, with a contingency, I should be okay. Assuming I've done this before. But when you miss something entirely is when that law falls apart. And so, as a developer, things that are frequently missed, fixtures, furniture, and equipment, startup costs, holding costs, and on the GC side, what gets missed it's a tough question, but usually something.
Usually something, right? And they own that. The tough part about a contract, particularly in construction, right, is you agree to do X amount of work to build a building for this amount. And if nothing in that scope changes, you own everything whether it's on the budget or not, right? You have to deliver that product. So you're really taking on that financial risk. Same thing on the subcontractor side.
No doubt. And the tough part about the subs is, it's all a game of risk transference. So I transfer the risk of the construction cost to a GC who transfers that down to the subs. Ideally, they transfer some of that onto a vendor, to a material supplier, but it sort of stops there, and the contracts are fairly broad and well written. So I do have some sympathy for subs and the risk they take.
Let's talk about the biggest risks on each side of the table. So we'll start with construction and say large scale. Like when they're working on a project, they're putting in a number, they get a signed contract on a deal. Like what's their biggest risk from the signed contract to the opening of the building? Where does that risk lie? What are they most concerned about?
I mean, you're going to commit to an owner at 80% drawings, and it's a GMP, and it's your job to interpolate and to fill in the blanks. And so you certainly want to have a contingency there for yourself as a contractor. But until you've really bought out 100% of the job, risk remains. So that's one form of risk. The biggest form of risk, and what we've seen many, Goliaths of construction, fall down with, is subcontractor failures below them.
Mm-hmm. Is that common?
I wouldn't call it common, but it can be catastrophic when it does happen.
When it happens, it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And especially, let's say, in a market like the last 10 years, we've been in a bull market. If your subcontractor falls down, it's not like there's another subcontractor pool that's just available to pick up the slack and make it happen, right?
Right.
You're running into schedule delays.
Construction's a risky business with a fairly low profit margin. And you start doing filed sub-bid, like government work, which is typically not a GMP, it's typically a lump sum, and you get a lot of that on your plate, and you find out that you had some scope misses, you could be in a tough spot. So,
and you mentioned the buyout piece. So the general contractor is signing their contract, and all they really have are estimates from subcontractors at the moment, right? So they haven't turned around and signed a deal with the subcontractor yet. And so after they sign the deal, that feels like a risky time at the general contractor until they get signed agreements with each sub? Like how often are the general contractors getting pressure and like change in price from the subcontractor? And I know there's like kind of risk. You gotta give a quote, and that quote is good for 30, 60, 90 days. But if a sub missed something in their bid and they recognize it now, they're going to try to do whatever they can to try to get some of that money in scope back, right? Or maybe they try to walk on the job, and now the general contractor's stuck.
All of the above, yeah. You might have a letter of intent with a sub. You might have a proposal from them. In some instances, we can sign up a sub in advance of a full contract with the owner. But, really, I can't have much of a strong agreement with a subcontractor until I have a strong agreement as a contractor with the owner. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. So if there's early buys, things that have long leads, or particularly volatile in terms of cost and escalation, typically approach an owner and say, like, look, I know we haven't come to Jesus on the full number, but let's release me on steel and this window package so that we can at least get that going. It's in your interest. And if this thing falls apart, you can have the windows.
Where there's risk in that buyout, there's also opportunity. How common is it for the GC, once they actually get the signed contract, to try to renegotiate and rebid the deal with their subs? Like if you sign for X deal carrying all their numbers, and then you can scrape 2, 3, 5% off of these numbers, that's all bottom line or additional contingency to cover your risk down the line, right?
So it depends. And it depends on the contract delivery method. So GMP, most GCs will tell you it stands for guaranteed maximum profit. And that's because if you do squeeze a sub, if you do shake 3% out of it, it doesn't go to your bottom line. It goes back to a shared savings bucket, a contingency. And at the end of the job, hopefully you've negotiated some shared savings. So perhaps you keep 30% of that largesse. So in a GMP, it's all open book format, and all of those savings would really accrue to the project.
Is that the most common contract type, GMP?
On larger projects, it is. I personally, I think it's a little bit overused. I think banks like GMPs. They see it as a more risk-averse form of contract delivery, and there's an argument for why that is. But man, if you're doing some podium, pretty cookie-cutter stuff that you've done time and time again, you should really think about a lump sum. Stipulated some contract.
What are the pros and cons for a lump sum? Or I guess, like, why would a bank or somebody not want to do a lump sum?
So in a lump sum, what you own is every nut, bolt, and washer, right? There's no obligation on the part of the GC to fill in blanks or provide anything which is reasonably inferable. So you better have some pretty good drawings, and you really shouldn't be signing a lump sum contract based on 80% design documents. Whereas a GMP, you can get a level of comfort that with a contingency and with a good experienced contractor, you're going to be covered as far as the number and not have to go back to the bank. But
so there's a little relationship, and then let's say speed to start a project, the shovels in the ground type of thing. When you're on an accelerated design to construction schedule, GMP is a let's call it a fair deal or a more aligned deal early on.
Yeah, and look, if I'm building a lab or some sort of like healthcare hospital, I'll probably want a GMP and a contractor who's done a lot of that very intricate work with subs who are very sophisticated and familiar with that type of work, because you will realize the benefit of those things. But on the smaller open shop stuff where the subs aren't that sophisticated, good luck with your argument about why that was reasonably inferable and should be included, though not shown on the drawings. You're going to be in a fight all day, so it adds a lot of administrative costs and time to pursue an open book GMP. Every cost has to be improved prior to every contract execution. You must sign off. So definitely get further into the weeds on contract delivery, but
yeah, and there you're trying to partner with somebody that's bidding the job, not necessarily the plans, right? Because if we're switching to the developer side and where's the risk lie in a lump sum deal, you better hope the drawings are perfect, because if the contractor gets hurt in a lump sum deal, there's going to be something they can point to that's legitimate to get added money.
Definitely.
Right. And what does that do to the developer side? I know, like, especially let's say it's a deal where they're raising equity and debt. The contractor's asking for more money and they thought they had a lump sum number. I imagine they got to go find money somewhere. And your equity and debt partners aren't going to say like, oh yeah, here you go. Right. We have more.
So, I mean, development is a very capital intensive business, and there are some developers who are very well capitalized and others who are not. And, you hope you have a rainy day fund and you hope that you have a healthy contingency. But if you don't, you may be in a position where you're going back out to the market to raise more money midstream. Banks never like it if you come back to them for a second bite at the apple. That's sort of a demerit on your permanent record. they look to you. They go to their loan committee and they say, Mark's an experienced developer. He told us the project is going to cost this and it's going to return that. And if you come back to them midstream and say, thanks for all that money, I found out that I was wrong about how much it would cost. It certainly happens. Look, I mean, the unforeseen conditions come up. It doesn't mean that you're a bad developer because you stumbled on something that you could never have foreseen, or escalation was rampant.
Was this the challenge with construction escalation during COVID?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that hurt in a lot of ways because our interest carry is significant. And when projects were shut down and approvals were not taking place, your carry costs, I'm sure.
That was a really hard time, right? Like it's 2020. It's all the banks are tied up doing PPP loans, so they're not out there servicing the cities and towns don't know how to have a permit approval meeting, so nothing's getting approved. And then COVID and regulations, a lot of job sites just get shut down, so they can't advance. So there's a lot of stalling for months.
There are certain risks that I sign up for as a developer and that I can see and I take on, but there are certain risks that come at me that, I'll give you a quick example. National Grid went on strike a few years ago, and I had a 7-unit building pretty much finished, and I wasn't able to get gas service. Without gas service, I couldn't move buyers in. I couldn't close condominiums, and I was sitting there left holding the bag, and that could have gone on for a very long time. So we scrambled. We were able to get propane tanks set up. We cautioned off the parking area with concrete-filled bollards. We converted all of our gas cooking and our gas heating to propane temporarily, and we navigated through it with the help of the Boston Fire Department, who were actually a really good partner in that instance. But
I could see even getting that temporary service being set up being a challenge. It's not like these sites in Boston are huge. Like you're using every square inch of the site for parking or pedestrian traffic. Like you need all that space. And
you need clearances. And I was so lucky to have parking behind the building with sufficient clearance from my building and adjacent buildings. But, definitely sleepless nights. Like staring at the ceiling. What am I going to do? My interest carry is this. I have this much left. Like this is bad news. And I never saw that coming.
Right. And was that a 7-unit condo building?
That was 7 units, yeah, in East Boston.
You think about how bad that can get if you have to carry the cost of 7 condo units in Boston, not only the opportunity cost of income or being covered, but if you have to cover what would otherwise be a mortgage for those 7 condos for months, that very quickly eats into the project.
Yeah. If you think about it, we pay interest on what we've taken from our loan, so how much has been advanced. And by that point in the job, everything's been advanced. You're paying whatever percent on the full nut. At that point, it was probably something like 4%, which sounds great right now. Mm-hmm. Plus whatever you're paying to your equity. But, yeah.
We've had real estate in terms of value and opportunity has kind of had let's say it's a 40-year tailwind of declining interest rates. This is the first time in all of our lifetime that we're seeing interest rates rise. Mm-hmm. How is that going to affect property value?
Yeah, man, it's been crazy. I've been using a Ted Ty from National Development, as he says. I've been calling the 9th inning for going on 5 years. Everyone thought this game's gotta come to a conclusion, and so I think finally the whistle has been blown, or it's in the process of concluding, because the cheap free money has the spigot has been turned off, and that has an effect. So I think that we're fortunate to live in a very resilient city and a resilient market like Boston, where supply is so anemic, and there's just such a shortage of housing and strong demand, and people whose jobs are well-paying and not going anywhere. And I'm aware that that's the story I tell myself so I can sleep at night.
Yes, we are definitely fortunate to be in the greater Boston area. That's for sure. It's arguably the strongest multifamily market in the country.
Yeah.
Looking at population data and that sort of stuff from in Massachusetts, we've had a growing population for 20 years, but we haven't created the housing for them. So that's one. Let's say that's a positive support of that real estate values are going to be fine, but that rising interest rates completely changes affordability in the market. I saw something of, it was data, I think it was from John Burns, real estate consulting company. And the data that they posted was interest rates rising from 3 to 6% disqualified, I think it was 20, was it 20 or 2? It was an astronomical number, 20 million households from a $400,000 mortgage.
Yeah.
I might even be off by a factor of 10 there. I forget what the number was.
It,
Might have been
it's
200.
yeah, it's significant. I don't expect prices to plummet. I would take a very strong wager that we're not going to see any massive correction. Do I think that buyers will have the luxury of seeing a property twice before they have to make an offer, or maintaining their contingencies, or having some leverage in terms of a negotiated price? Absolutely, but I don't expect like a collapse. There's just too many people looking for roofs for a long time.
I could see let's say pre-market for new development, condo sales, apartment. Well, rentals are going to be up. There's going to be a ton of pressure for rentals, but let's say condo deals, it's going to be harder to get those done. But pre-market leasing or in marketing is going to be super important for those types of products, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be harder to sell product pre-construction.
Marc as the Superconnector of Boston real estate. I know that's the leading title of this episode, because you truly are Boston Superconnector in all things construction and real estate. You were a tremendous help to us. I think one of our first, let's say, real buildings was a 3-family for you in East Boston back in 2016, maybe 2017. And you've been we've become friends over the years, but you've also been a tremendous supporter and connector with us, with other architects or developers or builders. And it seems like you do this for everybody in the entire market. You're like the leader of goodwill or the law of reciprocity. Yeah. And what I think why it works so well for you is you're truly not out there looking for anything in return. There's no ultimatum like, hey, if I scratch your back, you'll scratch mine. You're just out there helping. It seems like the general market in Greater Boston. So if we could talk about, you've leveraged social media, it seems, that helps you create and kind of like, let's say, pour gas on that fire to like amplify your value to the market. You started Real Estate Addicts podcast. You're posting your journey of your own development and construction. You're having difficult conversations. You're on Instagram. You're on LinkedIn. Like, why do you put all that time in? Like, what came up with the idea of being open and visible on social media? Why the podcast? Like, where does it come to be?
Yeah, well, thank you for that recognition.
You got it, man. You deserve it.
You know, I guess to take a step back, you look at Boston and you look at guys who've been successful. Start with Jack Connors, and then I look at John Fish, who is sort of a protege. Jack Connors was John Fish's mentor in a lot of ways. And those are two guys who I certainly respect and admire. And every time you get off the elevator with John, let me know if there's ever anything I can do for you. Marc, if I can ever be of service, let me know. And it wasn't just empty boards. If something was going on with your family or you needed something, or call John, try to help you. The answer is yes. And so that's something that I've sort of tried to take with me.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. And like, I don't know if this sounds weird, but my brain is sort of wired in a way that I just think of connections. Like everything is a wheel with lots of spokes coming off a hub. And I just make notes. If someone says something to me like, hey, I've been thinking about a new opportunity, or I'd like to transition onto the development side of it. Okay, noted. And then next time I'm talking to somebody else and they might say, I'm thinking about growing my company, I'll try to put that together and I'll see if there's a way I can be helpful. So
I think you're right in that thinking. Life is about connections. And I often refer to scarcity versus abundance mindset. And I think when you're out there trying to help people at scale, that's truly the abundance mindset, is that if you can create value and help other people be successful, you too will be successful.
Me personally, I am very driven. Like I want to create success. I want to achieve things in life, but I never want to do that at the cost of somebody else around me. I want to achieve those things by helping everybody around me be successful as best as I possibly can.
Yeah,
Right.
and I
That's
recognize that nothing either of us are saying here is any kind of epiphany. It's fairly obvious on its face. But if you get a chance, there's an old Boston magazine article called "Is Jack Connors the Last King of Boston?" And I think that 3-page article puts it better than mere you could hear. So I'd recommend checking that out. Has a lot to do with this and sort of how I approach things. Selfishly, look, I don't do that much volume. There's a couple ways to get people's attention and get their best work and their best prices. And one of them is to command a lot of volume. Mm-hmm. The other is to refer a lot of volume. So I don't approach my subs and my trade partners like some approach their babysitters. Like I know families who won't give the name of their babysitter for fear that on New Year's Eve their babysitter will be at Renz's house instead of at their house. To me, if an electrician or a plumber is doing excellent work and they're growing a company and you need a plumber and you're a friend of mine, I'm gonna share that contact. And I hope that they grow and maybe I'll find another plumber, but the trade-off is worth it to me.
That's a great example, especially let's say over the past 5-10 years, this bull market, particularly the last 5. Construction's been busy. Everybody's got backlog. Everyone's working extra hours. There's a real pressure in the construction industry. And if, let's say, a subcontractor, an electrician, they have 2 clients. One does 2 projects a year. The other one does 10 projects a year.
Yeah.
The client that's doing 10 projects a year has more command of them. They're going to want to support the hand that feeds them, right? And in your case, instead of like you're not driving this crazy volume to have that pressure, but you're providing value in other ways. It's not like dangling a carrot of more future work. It's providing value to them in other ways so that the law of reciprocity, right? They want to come in and help you because you've done so much to help them. So you connect them with those people that give them the volume, then you get the preferential treatment.
Yeah. The other compliment I'd like to give myself is I think that I run a very efficient job, and that extends from design professionals down to subcontractors. Nobody likes to do things twice, to take 2 steps backwards and 1 step forward. So if you need direction from me, I think I'll give it a thoughtful review before giving a decision or direction, and I just try to have answers so that people can. I only make money, and I'm only successful if everyone around me is successful, and that's
There
a real
it is.
thing.
Let's jump to real estate addicts. What made you want to launch the podcast? What advice do you have for a new podcaster in me? How has that journey been for you?
We've had so much fun doing it. We've got almost 90 episodes. We've met so many great people through the podcast. The episodes are great. We talk to such a diverse group of people, from a fire protection engineer to Ted Ty from National Development, super successful real estate developers. I learned something from each episode. Selfishly, I love it. I got to spend 2 hours with even a handicap accessibility consultant. These are things that these people bill hundreds of dollars an hour. We talk about low-income housing tax credits, opportunity zones, and really what the cause for the podcast, the reason we started was there's no textbook. If you look up how to zone, what is the zoning board of appeals process in Boston, there's not a single good resource you can find out there. Anyway, so we want to make it real, in air quotes.
Yeah, I imagine so. And I'm sure it's led to all types of new relationships. And like you said, some of those things are nuances in your industry that you might not find out until you run into that problem. But now you're having interviews and conversations with experts in those fields like handicap accessibility or opportunity zones. And you get to learn, share that wealth of knowledge with the community and build more goodwill.
Definitely, man.
And like you say, you enjoy the conversation.
I do. Real estate developers are one step above used car salesmen in the popular imagination. And that's in part because I think everybody sees the glamorous photos and the sellout numbers, the eye-popping sellouts at the end, but they don't really understand the journey and the risks and the sleepless nights. And so something that I like about the podcast is, we don't just talk about the balls that you smashed. There's a lot of at-bats and, times that the play did not go the way you drew it up. And it's a lot of money and it's a lot of risk. And so I like sharing those stories.
It's an important part, right? It's easy to put up this facade of perfection, especially in social media today. Yeah. Like we're unblemished people. That's never the case. The journey is not a straight line. They're not all wins. There's losses along the way. There's challenges that we all face. And I think sharing that makes it more approachable and helps people understand that they too can achieve whatever they set their mind to. All right, my closing questions. I ask everybody, what's your top book or podcast that you'd recommend to somebody?
I don't have any book that's changed my life or has been profound in some way, but I listen to a ton of podcasts, and two that are on the top of my listening queue right now are Hidden Brain and The Happiness Lab. So I think they're great podcasts. They're both pretty much psychology based, and I think a lot of what we do in business comes down to people and emotional intelligence and all that good stuff. So that's my short answer. Check out Hidden Brain with Sean Curvedante and The Happiness Lab with Dr. Lori Santos. Both really good. And
life is all about people. You're 100% right. Yeah. I think I've already expressed this on some previous episode, but if this is your first time listening, I'll reiterate it. Psychology was something I completely dismissed earlier in my life. I took the course in high school. I did the minimum possible to get through. It was not engaging. I thought it was a joke. It was totally useless. As I've grown as a leader and invested in my own personal growth, right? I talk about lifelong learning. I've come to think psychology is one of the most important things in life that we can understand. It is foundational to everything we do. Your personal relationships, your relationships with your colleagues, marketing, sales, negotiating, everything is foundational in psychology. So it's honestly what I'm studying the most, I think, over the last few years in different avenues. I'm learning about psychology through those other sectors I just mentioned, right? I want to learn about marketing. And when I went through marketing, sales, and negotiating, I was like, this is all just psychology. They're all the same fundamental principles, slightly twisted for the application. So I think that's great.
Management. I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, absolutely right. And the best advice you have for emerging leaders?
I think that there's a desire to just skip straight to the top of the mountain. So I'm a skier. I think you got to respect the mountain. So crawl, walk, run. Start on the bunny hill, build up. The race is long. You don't have to do everything all at once. You can make a mistake and survive, but you can't make all the mistakes at the same time and stay standing. So just build up slowly. It's a long road.
That's good advice. There was a graphic that I saw on LinkedIn recently that was somebody climbing a mountain, or it looked like that they were at the top of the mountain, but in reality, they're just on the side of the mountain. They're just at a sub peak, and they have way more to go, right? That mountain, there's no destination to where we're going. It's just a journey. So you got to learn to enjoy the journey and just keep moving. That the top of the mountain is something we always move further and further away, right?
That's always an interesting study. It's like, when do you take your chips off the table and go to the beach? That's another podcast, but
Marc, thank you so much. I appreciate everything that you do. I wish you nothing but the best. For those that would like to learn more about you and find you, Real Estate Addicts, that's on all major podcast channels.
Yep. Absolutely.
And what's the best social media, I'm assuming? Where should they find you?
Follow my Instagram, which is choose_Boston. Thanks so much for having me on, Lens. This was a ton of fun.
You got it. I appreciate you. Thanks, Marc.
Okay.
Everyone, can't thank you enough for tuning in today. I hope you got a ton out of today's conversation. And if you could do us one favor, if you did get value, please like, share, and comment. Subscribe on whatever channel you're tuning in on. Please leave a review. It helps us expand and grow and support more people. That's the end goal. We want to bring the insights of these amazing guests to as many people as possible. Thank you.
You know, I always tell newbies when they're getting started, I say, you need to be screaming from the rooftops that you're in this business. If people don't know you're in the business, they're never going to call you. They're never going to email you. And so you're just going to be sitting on your couch, twiddling your thumbs, not knowing what's going on. What is social media? It's the perfect opportunity for you to self-market yourself. There's no one that's going to go out there and fight and market you like you.